Hi, I'm Tye Justis. Disney's attempt to bring commercially trained comic artist Dave Stevens' The Rocketeer to life on the big screen almost didn't happen, due to a bitter lawsuit filed by Marvel Comics years before it was a crown jewel in the Disney empire.
The Rocketeer's protagonist is stunt pilot Cliff Secord, a thrill-seeking flyer who discovers a mysterious top-secret jetpack that gives him the ability to rocket through the skies. Set in Los Angeles and New York in 1938, Stevens gave his comic a retro style, influenced by matinee serials like The King of the Rocketmen and Commando Cody.
After Pacific Comics, the small company that produced the first 2 issues of the Rocketeer comic, went belly up, Dave Stevens started shopping his Depression-era hero and his ragtag team of daredevil aviators around to other companies. This included Marvel, who stepped up to publish. The only problem being Marvel's contract. Stevens was so turned off by the size of the signing contract Marvel sent him that he turned them down flat. Subsequently, Marvel sued Stevens, claiming that the Rocketeer was a ripoff of a minor character in one of their issues of a Daredevil comic from 1983. Notwithstanding that the first issue of Stevens' Rocketeer premiered in 1982, the year before, according to Preview magazine. According to Stevens, because of lawyers' fees and litigation, he almost went broke, at times only surviving on canned soup. Stevens said that the suit was just sour grapes on Marvel's part. Marvel lost their suit, of course, and Stevens moved on with 3 more issues of The Rocketeer through Eclipse Comics 2 years later.
Dave Stevens sold the film rights to The Rocketeer in 1983, staying on as the film's executive producer, and went through development hell due to too many cooks in the kitchen, eventually including Disney's Michael Eisner, who wanted to change the Rocketeer's iconic helmet to a more modern NASA-style one. Luckily, cooler and more efficient heads like director Joe Johnston's prevailed, and the classic design was left alone.
He has got to be kidding.
After a chance meeting with writing duo Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo, the trio came up with the makings of what would be the Rocketeer film. Stevens, Bilson, and DeMeo started huckstering their way through Hollywood, doing their best to pitch the Rocketeer to just about every major studio in town: Paramount, TriStar, Columbia, and even Universal, with no luck, aside from garnering the attention of producer Larry Gordon of Die Hard fame. It wasn't until William Deere, director of the surprise hit Harry and the Hendersons, came on board that the project was fast-tracked, with Disney jumping into the mix in 1986. The Rocketeer comics' more adult themes, though, didn't mesh well with Disney's squeaky-clean Snow White image, so out they went. The most offending being the protagonist's nude model girlfriend, Betty, modeled after Stevens' real-life wife at the time, Brink Stevens, and pinup legend Betty Page. So she was eventually changed to struggling, almost always fully clothed actress Jenny Blake. This was after she was changed to the voluptuous, still spunky Sally Blake, who also worked at a real-life but now defunct Broadway department store in an April 1990 draft of the script. The major change in her that Bilson and DeMeo tried to institute was making Jenny more than just a damsel in distress, which she mostly was in the comics. Up until April 1990, the script had her helping put out the fire after Cliff's BG crashes at the beginning of the script and punching a Nazi at the end. Most of that was unfortunately scrubbed out of the final draft by the time principal photography began in September 1990.
The premise for the Rocketeer film is pretty straightforward. Down on his luck stunt pilot with a beautiful girlfriend finds a top-secret jetpack created by Howard Hughes during the Great Depression. All the while, a Hollywood heartthrob and secret Nazi spy finds out and tries to steal the rocket and aforementioned stunt pilot's beautiful girlfriend, then kidnaps her. Stunt pilot rescues his beautiful girlfriend, defeats the Nazis' plans, and saves America from their nefarious aim to rule the skies and the world. Simple enough. Oh, and there's also gangsters and a cast of memorable characters who hang out in a cafe built to look like a giant bulldog. For real.
The more family-friendly approach was based on 2 films, the first being Disney's own most recent success, The Little Mermaid, after ending almost 2 decades of more box office failures than hits, and the second being Tim Burton's Batman. Ironically, Disney was consistently beaten at the box office by ex-staffers. Don Bluth left the Disney studios and made his films in the style that he believed Disney had lost in those recent years, and Tim Burton, who had worked on The Black Cauldron, a film that almost shut down Disney's theatrical animation studio for good after its failure to catch an audience. The massive success and merchandising windfall of anything and everything Dark Knight related made every studio want to turn anything they had into a toy-selling bonanza. So, this took precedence over staying true to the more mature themes of the comics, mostly at the behest of studio chairman Jeffrey Katzenberger.
Disney was originally going to produce The Rocketeer under their more mature Touchstone Pictures label, but Katzenberger had it put under the Disney label instead. This was more than likely because he wanted to cash in on the film's massive merchandising potential, which no one can really fault him for. The Rocketeer took almost 10 years to reach the big screen from when it was first drawn by Stevens. Disney constantly wanted different from the script, then the same, then different, then the same again.
Scribes Bilson and DeMeo were fired and rehired by Disney no less than 3 times before their version of the film was finally greenlit. This included a version of the script with a third-act submarine climax in place of the final Zeppelin one, contributed by director William Dear before he left the project because of how long it was taking to complete. Impressed with his work on Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and its massive box office compared to its virtually small budget, Disney execs hired future Captain America helmer Joe Johnston to take over the director's chair.
Johnston was even allowed to cast up-and-comer Billy Campbell as the lead to this film, all of which was to Disney's credit. This was a big risk for them too, seeing that this would be Campbell's first leading role. Just about every actor who was hot in the business at the time was approached to play the lead in this film, including Johnny Depp, who was actually Disney's favorite. But the director fought for and won Bill Campbell, who he and Dave Stevens felt fit the part perfectly.
For the role of Jenny, many young Hollywood actresses were considered, including Diane Lane, before Jennifer Connelly was ultimately cast. This was a great choice since Connelly fit the part well and wasn't all that hard to look at either.
You're a sweet little headache, but you are lots of fun. I've a good mind to spank you then.
The hero's long-suffering mentor, Peavy, was played by renowned character actor Alan Arkin. Arkin embodied the character of Peavy as someone who was grounded, wise, and ingenious, along with being a little sarcastic.
I told you I should have tested it myself.
Yeah, you'd be halfway to Kansas by now, you chowderhead.
What do you think was going on at the house?
House? We don't got a house, Clifford. We got a gazebo.
The chemistry was strong between the two leads, in no small part, I'm sure, due to the fact that they started a romance during filming that led to a 5-year engagement before, unfortunately, running its course.
An interesting turn for the new James Bond at the time, Timothy Dalton, was playing a charming and charismatic villain modeled after the equally charming and charismatic screen star of old, Errol Flynn. Dalton's villain's backstory being lifted from real life and false rumors that Flynn was secretly a Nazi by a hack biographer. These rumors ran rampant and uncontrolled for decades, even up until the final draft of the script. These rumors were nonetheless completely false. An unexpected benefit of the Bond franchise being in the midst of a lawsuit at the time allowed Dalton downtime, since he would probably have been filming his third film as Ian Fleming's secret agent at the time cameras rolled on The Rocketeer. Worked out great for this film. The Bond franchise wouldn't start up again until the mid-90s with its new Bond, Pierce Brosnan in Dalton's place. Dalton's suave persona also shaped the villain Neville Sinclair into a more Flynn-esque character instead of one more like the character actor James Mason, which the villain was originally based on and was even scripted close to only months before filming began in an April 1990 draft of the script. Dalton coming on board also inspired Bilson and DeMeo to work his natural charms into the villain himself.
Here's to you, and to the extraordinary way your face catches the light. One day, Jenny, a man will look into those eyes and he'll drown.
Rounding out the film's roster are a great supporting cast of very talented character actors that should be familiar to just about anyone who's ever been to the movies.
With franchises like Indiana Jones, Ghostbusters, Superman, Batman, and other sci-fi fantasies either winding down or firing up, the market seemed primed and ready for more comic book heroes. At the time, Disney's other golden era hero, Dick Tracy, was getting a lot of hype, sporting a star-studded cast and a huge out-of-control budget. This actually became a problem since Disney started pulling the reins after director and star Warren Beatty's Tracy went massively over budget and was plagued with production headaches that only a cast full of megastars could generate. Through tight production spending and a very ingenious and industrious crew, The Rocketeer only exceeded its budget when Disney execs watched the dailies and voluntarily put more money into production, realizing that it was a much larger project than they originally gave it credit for. In a rare twist, Dave Stevens was given producer credit and a good amount of creative control. He did his best to keep the film as true to his vision as possible.
It's him! It's the Rocketeer!
Johnston, already being a veteran of films like Star Wars, made him perfect for The Rocketeer. He did, after all, design Boba Fett. Along with production designer Jim Bissell and concept designer Ron Cobb, Along with a small army of other artisans in every department, The Rocketeer was getting ready to confidently make its summer 1991 release.
To top this off, and probably in response to needing to ramp up The Rocketeer's live-action marketing campaign, Disney put out a trailer that gave away every single plot twist and important moment of the film.
To some, it was the fulfillment of a dream. To others, it was an instrument of destruction. A creation that could change the course of history.
It was stolen from my factory. Where's the package?
What do we tell the president?
Tell me exactly why this merchandise is so important to the feds.
It's a rocket.
A rocket?
What? What's the matter?
I don't know. There's something under the seat.
Oh, my. What do we got here?
What are you supposed to do? Is it a bomb or something?
No. I wouldn't touch that if I were you.
The Cirrus X-3 rocket pack, as it's known in the film, started out looking a little different in the comics.
In the script, the rocket was still described as the version in the original comics up to a few months before principal photography began.
The designers, to make it function in a more third-dimensional way, seem to have looked more at Adam Strange for inspiration and came up with the design that we see in the final film.
This was important, especially after the real-life rendering of the comic book rocket pack didn't exactly gel with what the filmmakers wanted it to look like in live action.
After seemingly endless concepts, art department designer Henry Darnell, production illustrator Edwin Eath, along with director Joe Johnston and concept designer Ron Cobb, agreed on the final design that appears in the film. The team behind the X-3 had to balance style, functionality, and the fact that it had to mesh well with the hero's costume and helmet design so it would match from all angles and not look like a disjointed mess.
How do I look?
Like a hood ornament.
The Rocketeer's cinematographer, Hiro Narita, wanted to avoid the garish, candy-colored sharpness he saw in other contemporary films of the day. He did this two ways. One, by using Kodak's new, at the time, 5% low-contrast 5296 film stock that helped give the film a more period look. Two, he used a slight soft effects filter to take some of what Narita called unpleasant crispness out of the image so it wouldn't look too modern.
Everything about you is a lie.
It wasn't lies, Jen. It was acting.
Filming the heavily prosthetic Lothar character also presented Narita with problems as to keeping the 7-foot-tall henchman looking human and not like an actor with obvious appliances glued to his face. Filming prosthetics is usually difficult enough no matter what. Careful lighting and very detailed makeup and sculpting work help pull off the full effect. Production design was another high bar set by The Rocketeer. Production designer James Bissell had the daunting task of recreating the essence of a Hollywood long forgotten, a naive optimism of a bygone era that's still alive and well in old movies, if it ever really existed outside of a movie theater to begin with. One major necessity of The Rocketeer was crystal-clear, smog-free blue skies. The production also needed vintage cityscapes and vistas unmarred by modern construct. This instantly made filming anywhere inside the LA basin completely out of the question. So the production moved up north to Santa Maria, California, specifically an abandoned World War II bomber strip that had long been forgotten. Retrofitted by the designer and production team, this forgotten strip became the Rocketeer's Chaplin Airfield. The rest of the period-accurate settings and effects would be accomplished with old-school glass matte paintings by the very talented Mark Sullivan, practical effects, full-blown sets, blue screen, live-action stunts accomplished by aerial stunt team leader Frank Holgate and his Daredevil crew, and early digital compositing. It wouldn't be fair to judge the effects by today's standards, but even if you do, they're still fun, due in no small part, I'm sure, to special effects wizard Ken Ralston, the VFX supervisor for The Rocketeer at ILM. Classic film references in The Rocketeer abound, but the shot at Grauman's Chinese Theater at the premiere of Bette Davis's Jezebel is probably one of the most obvious. My favorite is a nod to the Tyrone Power Joan Fontaine film This Above All, which was used as a stand-in for the fictitious Neville Sinclair flick Wings of Honor. Another notch in this film's belt is, of course, its music. James Horner wrote a high-flying score that captured not only the action and adventure of The Rocketeer, but also that of the big band-era sound that defined the greatest generation.
When they begin the beginning, it brings back the sound of music so tender.
Everything was set up for The Rocketeer's success, even the theater it premiered at. The El Capitan Theater was built in classic silent movie palace style in Hollywood, California in 1926. It was rechristened the Hollywood Paramount Theater in 1942 and modernized. After years of changing hands after the Antitrust Act, the Walt Disney Company bought the theater in the 1980s, restored it to its original glory, and guess which film it chose to reopen it with? You guessed it, The Rocketeer. Everything was coming up aces for Cliff and the crew, for the time being.
I think he's had enough.
Cut. You bet I've had enough. I've been punched, shot at, kicked, and it's only 10 a.m. I guess that's the life of the Rocketeer.
In spite of its pedigree in front of and behind the camera, which included veteran actors, newcomers, and one of the best Bonds himself, Timothy Dalton, The Rocketeer unfortunately did not meet expectations. Not for anything reflecting the quality of the film, but in my opinion, a less than optimally targeted marketing campaign, one that was at times too generic and other times revealed too much. The film was also possibly thought of at first as a cartoon by some due to the initial Art Deco posters and Disney putting its name on it between their hit The Little Mermaid and its upcoming juggernaut Beauty and the Beast.
Another problem was that the property was obscure to the non-indie comic reading public at large, no matter how popular it was to comic book readers at the time. Knowing this, the marketing campaign wasn't tailored in a way that carefully examined the particular strengths of its indie comic roots. You couldn't market The Rocketeer like Tim Burton's Batman, Dick Donner's Superman, or even Warren Beatty's Dick Tracy, all well-known properties for over 50 years apiece by then. Who knows if that would have made The Rocketeer a hit at the box office, but it might have helped. By the time the Disney team advertising The Rocketeer realized that they were wasting the mugs of a pretty handsome cast, a live-action poster was put into circulation. The damage was apparently already done, though, and the live-action poster did little to help despite pretty high-profile press junkets by the cast.
You mean, I wanted to get him out here. What did you mean by, oh, he really plays it, you know?
Well, it's pretty obvious. I mean, you just looked like you were having the time of your life out there. And I think
I just try to find everything. I play an actor. I mean, he's a movie star. Yeah. So he's a kind of a hero, apparently. But really, he is the villain. I just kind of try to find all those awful things about actors that I could kind of send up, you know, like vanity and insecurity and lies, because we all lie for a living. Yeah. And I think we were well matched, hero and bad guy.
For whatever reason, The Rocketeer barely made back its initial budget, becoming a financial disappointment. No matter that the film stars Bill Campbell and Jennifer Connelly were signed on for multiple films, by July 1991, lackluster box office crushed any chances for The Rocketeer's at least 2 planned sequels. Despite the best intentions, solid budget, the best designers, actors, writers, directors, Disney Studios, James Horner's high-flying score, and a small army of artists at the top of their game, The Rocketeer barely made back its estimated $35 to $40 million budget, grossing only around $46 million in the interim. This proves that even if all your ducks are in a row, bad timing can derail even the best intentions.
many of us take flying for granted. Whether it's a simple flying machine or a sophisticated aircraft, though, there's still a kind of magic in our ability to fly. But one dream of flight has yet to be realized. A person flying virtually on his own without the aid of an airplane. Just imagine strapping a rocket to your back and taking off. Impossible, you say? Well, not if you're the Rocketeer.
Over the decades since its release, The Rocketeer has only grown in popularity. It's even been honored in cosplay, Funko Pops, an indie animated short, and even a Disney Junior spin-off Rocketeer series that ran from 2019 until 2020.
Meet Hughesville's superhero, the Rocketeer!
Having been the Rocketeer in the Disney movie in 1991, I was thrilled to hear that Disney were sort of kicking the ball around again.
My dad needs help. Nobody else can get up there fast enough.
Kit is this modern-day superhero. She receives a surprise package on her birthday, revealing that she's next in line to become the Rocketeer.
I'm very excited for a new generation of kids to be introduced to the Rocketeer, especially for my own kids. I think it'll be fantastic.
Avionics, check. Clear to Rocketeer!
In the last few years, a live-action sequel has been rumored and or announced for either an actual theatrical release or release through Disney's streaming platform Disney+. Sadly, the franchise will have to go on without 3 of its founding members. Creator Dave Stevens, who died in 2008, writer Paul DeMeo, who died in 2018, and composer James Horner, who died in 2015. The Rocketeer was a combination of Depression-era action-adventure serials, classic films, and comics from the golden age of newsprint. The fact that it never became the originally planned trilogy it was meant to be is still disappointing. All that aside, The Rocketeer is a meta, retro period piece classic, Hollywood-referencing, special effects-heavy indie comic adventure film that for over 2 decades has found a loyal fan base. In fact, the one thing Rocketeer fans ask each other almost every time they find one another is, how is this not a huge hit? Bottom line, it's a fun, well-crafted yarn that's only gotten better with time. Let's just hope that the future of The Rocketeer is filled with as much hope, adventure, and optimism as its original comics were. I'm Tye Justis. I'll see you next time.
For those aerial stunts in The Rocketeer that were too complex to execute with stuntmen, director Joe Johnston called on the visual effects experts at Industrial Light and Magic.
Move the head, move the arms, move the legs, move it, shoot a frame of film, move it again, shoot a frame of film. Some of these shots, they might take 3 or 4 hours to do. Some of them take half an hour. It all depends on the complexity of the shot. I actually kind of try to imagine if it was me.